أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. In the name of Allah we begin. We seek refuge in Him from the evil within and from the enticing whispers of mankind and jinn. All praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We worship Him and we seek forgiveness from Him. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and to enter us into Jannah in the hereafter. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there's no misguidance for him. And whoever is misguided, then he will never attain guidance. And we bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, singular, no partners associated with Him. And we bear witness that Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, is His messenger and His servant. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give His blessings and His salutations upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to be pleased and satisfied with his companions and all those that follow his tradition and his sunnah until the day of judgment. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. There was a very unique time in history, which was the generation after the companions, alayhim ridwan, in which many great scholars of hadith were coming out in the different lands of Dar es Salaam. Some were coming out in Medina, in Mecca, in Basra, in Sham, right? And this would continue, but there was a very, very special time in Islamic history, especially the time of the four A'imma that were coming out as first generation, second generation after the companions, alayhim ridwan. And there was one scholar of hadith at the time. His name was Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj. He was a very great scholar of hadith. And he lived in Basra at the time. And as was common at the time, these scholars of hadith had many, many students that were learning from them and were trying to learn a hadith from them. This was again the golden age of hadith collection, where hadith were being narrated on different parts of the world and people were authenticating them and creating chains of narration to the Prophet ﷺ. And Imam Malik would later come and write Al-Muwatta, very famous book of hadith. But Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, he was in Basra at the time, and one day he was riding on his donkey. And as he was riding through the city, he had dozens of students surrounding him, and they were following him. And they were writing down everything he was saying. And subhanAllah, this image is always, subhanAllah, makes me feel so happy at that time. Because nowadays people are acting this way with the wrong types of people. You know, a celebrity comes, a singer comes or whatever, and everyone's crowding around trying to take pictures of him, trying to get an autograph, trying to touch him, right? And who is he? He could just be a nobody. But because he's famous or because he's in a movie or something like that, everyone's treating him that way. But at this time, Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, he was writing, Imam Shu'bah, and his students were following him, and they were writing down everything he was saying. And he's riding through the city, and there was a person in one of the alleyways of the city. And this person, his name was Al-Qa'nabi. Al-Qa'nabi was not a scholar. He was not an imam. He was not a student of knowledge. In fact, the description of what he was at the time was not a very good description. He was laying down in the alleyway, and he had no shirt on. And he had a bottle of alcohol in one hand. And he's sitting there, and he's half drunk. And he's, you know, just being not a very good person, and he doesn't look very appealing. And Al-Qa'nabi is sitting there, and he's drinking, and then he hears this commotion. And he looks down an alleyway, and he sees all these people surrounding this old man on a donkey. So he gets up, and he's like, "Whoa, what's this?" And he goes up to the people, and he says, "Man hadha? Who is this?" And he says in a very gruff way. And they say, "This is Shu'bah." You know, like, how do you not know this? This is Shu'bah. And he says, "Waman Shu'bah? Who is Shu'bah?" And he asks it in a way like very demeaning, like, who is this Shu'bah that you're talking about? Right? It's like asking the Imam of your, like, who is the Imam of your time? Like, what do you mean, who is he? Everyone should know him. So Al-Qa'nabi asks, like, who is Shu'bah? So the students, they say, he's a muhaddith. How do you not know Shu'bah? He's a muhaddith. And he looks at them and says, what's a muhaddith? I don't even know what that is. What does he sell? Like, he doesn't even understand this, like, you know, ماذا يبيع? You know, like, what is a muhaddith? I've never heard of this word before. What's his job? They say, muhaddith, like he narrates a hadith. So he says, oh, he narrates a hadith. So Al-Qa'nabi, he's looking for trouble. So he goes through the people, and he grabs the reins of the donkey of Shu'bah. And he stops the donkey, and he's making a whole scene. And, you know, the way he looks is not, you know, is very scary. You know, he's sitting there with no shirt on. He's all disheveled. He's drunk. He's got a bottle in one hand. And he's very rude. And he grabs the reins of this donkey. And he says, Ya Shu'bah, narrate a hadith for me. Hadithni. Right? They say you're a muhaddith, right? Give me a hadith. And in a very rude way. So Shu'bah looks at him and says, Lasta ahlan lil hadith. Says, you're not worthy of narrating hadith. Like, this is sacred knowledge. This isn't knowledge that I'm going around just because you tell me to dance, I'm supposed to dance for you. Like, you're not worthy of hadith. So Al-Qa'nabi, he doesn't like that answer. So he lets go of the donkey and he pulls out a knife. And he says, Hadithni, give me a hadith, or I'm going to stab you in the stomach. Right? So this was a very vulgar, very brutish man. He says, give me a hadith, or I'm going to stab you. So Shu'bah looks at him and he's not afraid. And his students are like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So Shu'bah looks at him, he's not afraid, and he says, Haddathana Sulaiman. Sulaiman has narrated us. From Mansur. From Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu al-Badri. An Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he gives him the whole chain. Right? And he says, from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he heard from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, إن مما أدرك الناس من كلام النبوة الأولى إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت. The hadith that he narrated from the Prophet ﷺ says, from the words that have been preserved from previous prophets is, if you have no shame, do as you please. This is a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and this is other prophets used to say this even before the Prophet ﷺ. And that's the point of this hadith, that this is something that all prophets came with this piece of knowledge. إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you have no shame, do as you please. And Shu'bah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this wisdom to say this hadith to Al-Qa'nabi. Al-Qa'nabi, he hears this and it shakes him. So he lets go and he puts his knife away. And then he decides he's going to go home. And he comes home to his mother. And he says, if my friends come looking for alcohol and looking for me to come and drink with them, tell them I've left. And she said, well, where are you going? He says, I'm going to the city of the Prophet, alayhi salatu salam. And he leaves Basra. Look at this. He was so shaken by this hadith that Shu'bah gave him that Al-Qanabi is like, I'm leaving. I'm going to Medina. So he leaves Basra and he goes all the way to Medina. And he goes to Medina and he says, I'm looking for the most knowledgeable person that can teach me hadith. And they said, there's nobody more knowledgeable in this whole city than Imam Malik. Imam Malik at the time was and he's the one that the Maliki madhab comes from, the Maliki school of thought, comes from him. And he's the author of Al-Muwatta, the very most famous book of hadith at that time, and still to this day is an extremely famous book. So Al-Qanabi goes to Imam Malik and says, I want to be your student. And he goes from a drunkard in the street, being brutish and holding people up at knife point, to becoming a scholar of hadith. And he learns. And actually, an interesting fact, one of the most authentic chains of narration of Imam Malik's Al-Muwatta comes from Al-Qanabi. He recited Al-Muwatta to Imam Malik perfectly. He memorized the book. And he became a scholar of hadith, learning a hadith from Imam Malik. After this, he decided, I'm going to go back and find my original Imam, Shu'bah. And he goes back and finds Shu'bah, or he goes back to the city and he says, I'm looking for Shu'bah, the original Imam. And they said he passed away. And when he heard this, he started to cry. He said, how much good have I lost because of his death? I've lost so much good because he passed away. And he decided, I'm going to narrate the one hadith I learned from Shu'bah to my student. Because at this point, he's such a high scholar. Al-Qanabi has learned so much. He's a scholar in his own right. So he goes to his student and he says, narrated from Shu'bah. From Al-Qanabi, me, I narrated from Shu'bah, who narrated it from Sulaiman, who narrated from Abdullah bin Mas'ud, who narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. إن مما أدرك الناس من كلام النبوة الأولى إذا لم تستحي فاصنع ما شئت. If you have no shame, then do as you please. If you have no shame, if you don't feel any shame for yourself, this is the hadith that he narrated to his student. Who was his student? Imam Bukhari. Imam Al-Qanabi. I started the story saying Al-Qanabi. He was a person in the street with a knife. He's the one now we call Imam Al-Qanabi, and he narrated this hadith to Imam Bukhari, his student. And subhanallah, it's so shocking to me that at the beginning of this story, Al-Qanabi, Imam Al-Qanabi, he did not know what a muhaddith was. He didn't know. He said he's a muhaddith. He says, وَمَا مُحَدِّث ماذا يبيع? What does he sell? And he hears one hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. If you have no shame, then do as you please. If you have no illam tastahi, if you don't feel a certain shame for yourself for the actions that you're doing, then do as you please. He heard this and he changed his entire life. He says, what am I doing? I'm sitting here pointing a knife at an imam, drunk in the street, with terrible friends. I need to go. I need to do hijrah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he went to Medina al-Munawwara and he studied under Imam Malik. He did this because of one hadith that said that you have no shame. So what am I supposed to do for you? Go do as you please. We hear a hadith and we hear ayat. And we have these apps on our phones that carry the knowledge, the cumulative knowledge at that time. They would have had to travel for months and months and months to find these ahadith. We have them on our phone as a PDF. And the question comes, do we have haya? Do we have shame? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Isn't it time that those who believe feel fear when they hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's remembrance is mentioned, shouldn't we feel a little bit of fear? What's been happening in the last couple of months is the world has been changing, and we're all acknowledging that the world has changed. The world is changing, but we're not. And that's one of the issues that we're facing. We're seeing the plight of the Muslims in every land and every place. But we ourselves, we have no shame. We feel no shame sometimes. And what we want sometimes is not what we need. Sometimes people come to a'imma and they come to scholars and they start asking, is this haram or is it makruh? Will I be punished by Allah if I do this, or is it permissible? If I do it and I don't show anybody and I don't tell anyone, is this permissible? If I look but it's only one look, it's not two looks, is this okay? Sheikh, this is a drug, but it comes from a plant, and the plant is tabi'ah, it comes from the earth. So is it really like khamr? Or is it just, is it allowed, is it not allowed? We want every imam to say, this is haram, qat'i, if you do it, you will go to hellfire forever. But the question should not be, is this haram or is this not? The question is, do you have no shame to ask something like this, to behave this way, to live this way? We come and we say we need to give sadaqah to our brothers and sisters in need. Is it wajib? Do we have to do it? No, it's not wajib. Okay, then I don't want to do it. You can't force me to give donations. Listen, if you have no shame, you want Allah to force you, okay, go ahead, do what you want. There are some people, and this is why Imam Shu'bah, he said to him this hadith in particular. He didn't say, for example, إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ وَالْأَنصَابُ وَالْأَزْلَامُ رِجِسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. He said, your alcohol is haram, for example. وَمَنْ عَادَ لِي وَلِيًّا فَقَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ. Whoever attacks a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah has... He didn't narrate any of these hadith or these ayat to him. He didn't say what you're doing is haram. He doesn't care if it's haram. So he told him the very truth, which is this: no matter what I say to you, no matter what we give you, verses of the Quran, hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, sunnah, at the end of the day, you have a problem that we can't solve, which is that you have no shame. Somebody that openly drinks in front of people, openly sins in front of people, openly behaves rude and brutish. And this is becoming normalized. People that have no dignity, officials, they'll be like cursing out and speaking in a terrible language. They have no shame. People that in the past, they would have done these sins in private because they don't want the public eye to see. Now they're posting about it on social media. They'll be taking them pictures with people, relationships that are not allowed, haram. And they have no shame. And then somebody will come and advise them in private. Akhi, you shouldn't be posting these types of pictures. You shouldn't be having these relationships. Only Allah can judge me. Who are you? Is this haram? Show me a verse of the Quran that says that this is haram. Show me and you can show him and you can show him. Oh, but that hadith is, I reject this hadith. Okay, but I don't interpret that ayah this way. At the end of the day, listen. You don't have shame, so I can't give you anything. I can't help you. Isn't it shameful that we stand out and we do a sin, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Allah does not command us to do anything evil, anything rude, anything debased. And for you to do it publicly and post about it, forget haram and halal just for a few seconds. Are you not a man that you post about this and show yourself and you're proud and you're okay with this and you behave this way? Young kids, in front of their friends, in front of relatives, they speak out against their parents and they yell at their parents. What are you doing? Isn't this embarrassing for you? You think this is making you look like a strong person or a man. You're making yourself look very pathetic. You yell at your mom? You curse at your father? Are we supposed to be impressed by this? إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِي فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. At the end of the day, it is your own dhamir, your own consciousness. If it's not there, halal and haram is not going to benefit you. Because if we give it to you and you may reject it and you may say, no, this is... Or you may demand that I want a specific thing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want something specifically from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that says I have to do this. This is something that I'm beginning to see so much nowadays. It's a very strange, it's very bizarre, it's very embarrassing. I'll see a Muslim in the masjid, outside the masjid, in a public place. I'll see a Muslim and I say, Assalamu alaikum, and I smile. And this is what they do. They give me this weird look. Yakhi, I'm so sorry if I offended you. I'm saying, Assalamu alaikum. Wajhin taliq, a smile. Right? It's embarrassing. What is this rudeness? That someone says salam to you and you're silent. Or somebody asks for your assistance or help or something like that, you ignore them. Right? Just very bad character, very rude character. And I'm not going to come here and I'm not a mufti. I'm not going to tell you this is haram or halal. Okay, there are some ayat, there are some hadith. But aren't you ashamed to behave this way with your brother or with your sister? That your Muslim brother or sister says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi to you with a smile. And you don't even respond, nothing. You look at them or you act like, I don't know this person. Are you okay? Like, did I do something wrong? And this happens in the masjid sometimes. We come into the masjid and there's someone, Assalamu alaikum. Well, I promise you, I'm not writing your name down and keeping it in a tab or something like that, or taking your picture. I'm just saying salam. This is the sunnah of our Prophet alayhi salatu salam. Well, I had somebody, young brother, the worst thing that ever happened to his life was the boycotts. He's like, you mean I can't do Starbucks or McDonald's? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So every few days he would text me. He says, wait a minute. Is it actually that McDonald's is supporting the enemy? Is it actually that Starbucks? Oh, I found this article that says this. Wait a minute, is it actually haram if I don't do boycotting? I'm like, Yakhi, it's not haram. I'm not here as a mufti to tell you McDonald's is haram, Starbucks is haram, or anything like that. But don't you feel a little shame that there are brothers and sisters, Muslims, who are being killed and slaughtered, and these companies and these businesses couldn't care less, and you can't even hold yourself to this? And he said, but wait, is it actually, will I go to Jahannam if I eat from? I'm like, Akhi, khalas, go eat McDonald's. Do what you want. You have no shame. I don't know what to tell you. You want haram or halal? I can't give you haram. I'm not a mufti to tell you that this is haram. But Yakhi, this is so shameful that you're living such a privileged life, you can't even stop yourself from going to a restaurant. Yeah, that's the least. Wallah, I feel ashamed with myself when we all feel shame when we see the people of Gaza. We have failed the people of Gaza. We failed them, let's be very honest. There's very little we can do. But even the little that we can do, even it's not going to make that much of a difference. But you know what? Allah, just because I have some dignity in me, I refuse to participate in certain things. I refuse to eat from certain places. I will still post about it, even though I know the same people keep watching the same posts and they've seen it, they liked it a million times. I'll still post because I feel shame. How can I just be quiet and live my life exactly as it is while people are getting slaughtered? But at the end of the day, إِذَا لَمْ تَسْتَحِ فَاصْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. If you have no shame, then do as you please. Because what the Prophet ﷺ is trying to tell us is, there may be something wrong here that no book of hadith, no Quran, no imam, no lecture is going to solve. If this in here is not fixed, so much so that even a drunk man in the street named Al-Qanabi had more shame than you and I. He heard one hadith from the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I'm going to fix my life. And how many millions of ahadith and ayat and hours we stay behind the imam listening to verses of the Quran and it does nothing. أم على قلوب أقفالها أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. All praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Him, and we bear witness that Muhammad is His messenger and His servant. Brothers and sisters, we as a community and as an ummah, we need to grow out of childish mentalities. And I'm speaking for myself, number one, but for everyone. As an ummah, collectively, when you're very young, you only want black and white. Haram and halal. It's haram, I'm like, okay, fine, it's haram. It's halal, okay, but do I have to do it? Oh, is it sunnah? Somebody, one of the ai he said, the difference between us and the companions is that the companions did something because it was sunnah, and we don't do something because it is sunnah. That's the difference between us and the companions. And this kind of self-awareness that we need to bring back to ourselves. The way we interact with young people, with old people, with our parents, with the opposite gender. Wallahi, the amount of lectures that we have to give about, for especially the young men, about how to interact with females, right? It's kind of embarrassing. It's like, why do I need to explain all of this to you? Isn't it just enough that this is, embarrassing for you to behave this way? Isn't it shameful enough? So we need to, sometimes the word shame, it has a bad connotation. We think shame is a bad thing. We said, oh no, it's very bad to have shame. No, haya is something good if used in the right way. To feel shame to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To feel shame to act with no akhlaq, rudeness. Right? People yelling, raising their voices in the masajid, screaming at each other, disuniting it with families. This is shameful. This is just, it should be embarrassing. And if it takes us to really reevaluate ourselves, to have shame, and to redefine what the word means, what hayat means, then that's what needs to be done, brothers and sisters. Because we are going to be looked back in the future. People will look back at our ummah, and be like, how did this happen? How did this ummah, did they not have any shame? Did they not how did they live with themselves? How did they sleep at night? And we don't want the answer to be, this was the generation that had no shame. This was the generation that lost all haya. So they did as they pleased. We need to be better than that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that have haya from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, a few announcements inshallah for the masjid. Tonight inshallah we have a Ask a Sheikh night with Sheikh Muhammad al-Badawi, who is going to be visiting for the youth. So any of the youth that will have questions, he's a qualified scholar. Sheikh Muhammad al-Badawi is from New York. He's one of the mass chapters there. I believe Brooklyn. I could be wrong, but I believe he's the Sheikh Muhammad al-Badawi from Mass Brooklyn. He'll be coming tonight, inshallah, after Salat al-Maghrib. It's an open night, Ask a Sheikh night. So if you're really interested in halal al-haram, or what is this, or how do I pray, or what do I do here, what do I do there, this is an excellent opportunity. I really encourage all the young people, and even some of the parents as well, to attend. There's no limitation for this. And inshallah, this is an opportunity for us to implement what we've learned from this hadith, from this whole story with Imam al-Qanabi. Okay, there's an opportunity, somebody of knowledge is going to be here. I want to attend. I want to listen from him. I want to learn from him. Inshallah, this Sunday as well, we have Fajr by the beach with Chaplain Qaisar, inshallah, as the guest speaker. There's a sisters brunch as well for the sisters that same day, that Sunday morning. That's going to be needed to be signed up for. You have to sign up for that, inshallah. And finally, Bayan Academy is taking registration, inshallah, for those that want to sign up for Quran. You can find more information on the television screens or the board outside. Brothers and sisters, again, this is us implementing the seeking of knowledge, the betterment of ourselves. We should as well, when it comes to knowledge, this is another thing. We should be ashamed of ourselves if we're, we speak Arabic, we've been praying for years and years and years, we're, above the age of whatever, and we still don't know basics. We can't recite past the surahs that we learned as a young kid. At the very least, this should cause some shame to ourselves. Like, I can do better than this. I can learn more. I can have the answers for this. Sometimes young kids, they ask their parents very easy, basic questions, and the parents, they come and they say, I don't know how to answer this. I said, okay, we need to do better. Let's, inshallah, have that sense of shame, this good haya. Haya is a good shame. It's a positive shame that forces us to do better, to do more. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and increase us in knowledge. Allahumma khfir lil-muslimina wal-muslimat, al-ahya'i minhum wal-amwat. Allahumma ati nufusana taqwaha, wa zakkiha anta khayrun man zakkaha, anta waliyuha wa mawlaha. اللهم انصر إخواننا في غزة اللهم انصر إخواننا في غزة اللهم حرر المسجد الأقصى الأسير اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين وارفع راية الدين اللهم من أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين خيرا فوفقه إلى كل خير ومن أراد بالإسلام والمسلمين شرا فخذه أخذ عزيز مقتدر وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu la ilaha illallah, ashhadu la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, hayya ala falah. Qad qamatis salat, qad qamatis salat. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah.
استووا استقيموا. Foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. Please put your phones on silent. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. واتل عليهم نبأ بني آدم بالحق إذ قربا قربانا فتقبل من أحدهما ولم يتقبل من الآخر قال لأقتلنك قال إنما يتقبل الله من المتقين لئن بسطت إلي يدك لتقتلني ما أنا بباسط يدي إليك لأقتلك إني أخاف الله رب العالمين إني أريد أن تبوء بإثمي وإثمك فتكون من أصحاب النار وذلك جزاء الظالمين فطوعت له نفسه قتل أخيه فقتله فأصبح من الخاسرين فبعث الله غرابا يبحث في الأرض ليريه كيف يواري سوءة أخيه قال يا ويلتى أعجزت أن أكون مثل هذا الغراب فأواري سوءة أخي فأصبح من النادمين. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لأجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.